Hi, welcome back to Memos to the President. We're releasing another memo, this one on advanced manufacturing. And for that, I'm here with my colleagues Addis and Brady to talk about the memo that they co-authored. But before we start, like with every guest, first of all, welcome guys. Good to have you on our show. I would like to ask you to talk a little bit about yourself. Who are you?
Thanks, Ilya. It's great to be with everyone. My name is Brady Helwig. I'm an associate director on SCSP's economy panel. I cover microelectronics and advanced manufacturing for the team. I come mostly from a think tank background, have spent the last couple of years working on supply chains and advanced manufacturing and how America can lead in those areas.
Yeah, it's great to be here. Thanks, Illy. So I studied political science in college. I studied international relations in graduate school, spent some time in think tanks working on China issues, technology policy issues, and I've been at SCSP for the past 2 years, working with Brady on the economy panel on a lot of issues, most recently advanced manufacturing.
Excellent. Before we talk about the memo, can you guys please define what is advanced manufacturing?
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, Illy, when people talk about advanced manufacturing, sometimes they define it in two different ways. Sometimes when they say advanced manufacturing, they just mean any industry that involves making technology products. So making everything from smartphones to cars and EVs to drones. We feel like that definition isn't super helpful because it pretty much covers everything in the economy, right? Or it could. What we're talking about in this memo is the technology layer. How do you take technologies like AI, like robotics, like additive manufacturing, and how do you build a production system that allows you to produce goods faster, cheaper, and better?
Addis, anything you want to add?
Well, I think that's why we refer to advanced manufacturing as a convergence technology area. There's a core set of technologies, robotics, machine learning, a whole range of digital tools that come together to create new advanced manufacturing paradigms. So we're talking about a paradigmatic shift in how things are made.
And why do you think this is important now?
Yeah, we think it's really important now, mostly because the U.S. lags behind China. China's the world's manufacturing powerhouse. China has spent over the last 5 years hundreds and hundreds of billions on building up its manufacturing base, and the U.S. it feels like we're really outgunned. But we feel like the emergence of these technologies and America's lead in AI and software give it a narrow window to start to chip away at China's manufacturing dominance. There are ways that AI and software apply to manufacturing, and if diffused at scale, could help us start to get back to pulling even.
Yeah, I think one of the thesis that Brady and I have had for a while is that the U.S. has distinct advantages in software and AI, and if we apply those advantages to the manufacturing sector, we can offset China's scale-based advantages. There's so many examples of how AI and software are transforming manufacturing industries. Brady and I, we wrote a report for SCSP on advanced manufacturing. And we talked to a lot of technology company founders who are using AI to transform their processes from top to bottom. So, for example, in the design phase, if you're designing an aerospace component, in the same way that you might go on ChatGPT and say, make me a picture of a sunset, designers who used to use CAD tools and painstaking process of designing a niche component, precision component for 3 weeks can now just type in, create me this component. Voila, you have a digital model.
Right.
On the factory floor, there's companies making solutions, what they call no-code, low-code solutions. So it's basically, you or me, who know probably next to nothing about manufacturing, are on a factory floor, managing, optimizing inputs and how things are working on the factory floor using nothing but an iPad, or putting in a 1,000-page technical manual for how a heavy machinery works into an LLM. The LLM spits out a simplified user's guide. So there's all sorts of things happening in manufacturing where AI is just lowering the technical barriers to entry.
That's a great example, Addis.
Yeah.
You mentioned China. Obviously, like in every other technology space, China has used the same playbook in which they identify technology or the future of that technology. They invest enormous resources. They put a lot of people, skilled people, to do these things. They identify regions where they're going to put these, manufacturing bases or technologies, and then they subsidize them, for the global purposes. Can you talk a little bit about their playbook, Brady and Addis, too, if you want to add?
Yeah, one stat that I like that illustrates just the scale of China's manufacturing buildup. In 2019, Chinese lending to manufacturers was about $60 billion. That had jumped to about $680 billion last year. We're talking about a 10 times increase. If you think about the CHIPS Act, to build chip fabs in the U.S., that was only about $52 billion.
Right.
So we're talking
Which
about
not
just
all was all for building manufacturing capability, I think.
exactly
30 plus billion were for building back semiconductor manufacturing base, but the rest was for the next generation, semiconductors and whatnot, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, and Addis can speak more to this, but over the last couple of years, Xi has pinpointed manufacturing as really the central engine of China's economy, really to help propel growth.
Yeah.
No, I think we all know the Chinese economy faces a range of structural challenges, and Xi has called manufacturing, specifically new quality productive forces, so things like renewable energy technology, electric vehicles, as the main battlefield in strategic competition and as the main solution to China's economic woes. But China in the late 90s was producing textiles, toys, and televisions. It's producing those things still, but it's also captured significant market share in all these strategic industrial verticals that we care about, that matter for economic competitiveness and national security. So drones, shipbuilding, critical minerals processing, machine tools,
Solar panels.
solar panels. So all these things we need to stay competitive. China has in some cases, a virtual chokehold on the production of those technology goods. So that's
Absolutely.
what's driving this memo.
All right, let's talk about the memo. Let's talk about how you organize the memo. What are the 3 objectives you outline in the memo?
Thanks, Ilya. Yeah, really the first objective that we have is to drive AI-enabled innovation in manufacturing. So Addis spoke a little bit to some of the case studies that we've seen for how AI changes manufacturing. One of the terms people are using for this is industrial AI.
Right.
So a lot of people this year are talking about AI agents and what happens when you get sophisticated AIs that can complete tasks for you. That's really exciting, but if we think about what's coming down the pipe over the next couple of years, thinking about AI agents that could manipulate machines in the physical world, AI agents that could help you build things, AI agents like robots that can move around in factories and help produce things more efficiently. That's something we're really excited about. In order to get there, there's a lot of innovation that needs to happen. There's a couple new fronts in AI science that we need to make advances in and make breakthroughs in. Really, you need AI models that understand real world physics. And in robotics, for example, you need the robot to just meet really high standards for safety so that no one gets hurt while the robot's operating in the factory.
Yeah, I think that leads nicely into one of the first recs we make, which is basically to say, okay, at the upper echelon of the U.S. industrial sector, there's a number of cutting-edge facilities operated by large manufacturing firms and startups that are software-defined and highly autonomous. So they use all the latest and greatest digital technology tools, AI, machine learning included, to optimize factory floor operations, et cetera. They also use all the latest and greatest automation technologies, so AI programmable robotic arms, palletization robots, which basically move goods around a factory really efficiently. So what we want to do is incentivize the construction of those kind of manufacturing facilities.
Yeah, in our memo, we call those factories of the future.
Right.
Again, these are like really advanced factories that can produce a variety of goods. But as far as we know, there's really no one in the U.S. government that's responsible for tracking how many of these facilities are being built, sharing best practices for how do you build one of these facilities and how do you make it flexible, how do you deploy industrial AI, et cetera. So we really think that needs to be a national mission that the U.S. government takes on.
Let's continue with the second objective. Can you talk a little bit about the second one, which is like how do we reorganize our manufacturing policy?
The U.S. manufacturing innovation ecosystem is really largely organized around 2 programs. One of them is called Manufacturing USA. It's a network of 17 public-private partnerships that convene institutes focused on advancing a manufacturing technology area. So there's institutes focused on robotics, biomanufacturing, microelectronics, nanofabrics. I think most experts agree that the Manufacturing USA program provides a really solid foundation for advancing U.S. manufacturing innovation. but it's under-resourced and it faces some weird structural problems that need to be resolved. On the resourcing side, similar programs in competitor nations and adversaries, so Germany, Japan, South Korea, and China, receive up to 10 to 30 times as much funding. So baseline funding is an issue that we need to solve. The second problem is a bit more niche and in the weeds, but it has to do with the expectation that each of the institutes becomes self-sufficient over a 5-year period. So removing that structural limitation will really enable the institutes to pursue riskier innovation and be less constrained.
Yeah, so just to take a step back and ask, why do these kinds of programs matter? I mean, there's a tremendous amount of innovation that's happening in manufacturing, as we've mentioned a couple times already. There's applications for AI and robotics, and all these different ways that you can apply technology to manufacture things cheaper and more effectively, more efficiently. But there's also a need when you're developing these technologies to provide government funding to make things easier and to de-risk them. These are really big investments over a long time horizon for companies. And if you're able to pool resources and to have the government help companies take risky bets on technologies, it can help make a big difference. The other key program in the U.S. Manufacturing policy ecosystem is called the Manufacturing Extension Partnership Program, or MEP. It's been around for a long time, and they actually have centers in every single state and every U.S. territory. And basically, they're small centers, and they just work with U.S. manufacturers to help them be more efficient and to help them run their businesses better. So it's a great program. They're boots on the ground. They know these manufacturers. They have relationships with them. But the problem is that this program hasn't been changed or updated really since the 1990s. And so there's a huge need, especially for smaller manufacturers, to help them figure out how do you deploy these technologies, how do you innovate. But this program, it could do a really great job of helping companies learn how to deploy these technologies, learn how to use them better, but it's just not set up to do that. And so that's our second recommendation. We really think that these programs need to be repositioned, reorganized to deploy technologies better.
It's all about technology adoption. I mean, the MAP program was established to make manufacturing companies more efficient, but adoption is really the key hurdle. I mean, something like 10%, only 10% of U.S. factories utilize robotic automation, for example.
Right.
So there's a huge imperative, especially when we talk about small and medium-sized manufacturers. There's about 300,000 and counting manufacturing firms in the United States, but some 95% of those are small and medium-sized, so like under 500 people.
Right.
And those companies face a range of hurdles when they go to adopt new technologies, upgrade systems, et cetera. So we need to do more to make sure those small firms, which are the backbone of the U.S. manufacturing sector, are upgraded. And
my question to both of you is, you have looked into this issue, you've met companies. We actually organized an AI Plus robotics summit where we tackled a little bit of this, and we wrote an action plan on this a while ago. Where do you see this in an ideal world in 5 years?
Yeah, I mean, you could start with a few metrics. You could say you want U.S. manufacturing productivity, which has been declining for decades, to go up. You could say you want manufacturing share of employment to rise. You could say you want gross manufacturing output to increase. I think those are all certain measures. I think I'm most excited by the construction of really cutting-edge facilities in the United States that are kind of the leading lights, the ideal factories of the future. That's what you want the United States to lead in, rather than, gross manufacturing output, for example. I think we'll get there because there's increasing investment, public and private sector, in manufacturing space. But I'm really most excited about the United States just being like a technological innovation leader in manufacturing technology. And all those technologies culminate in the construction of these really cutting-edge facilities. So that's kind of my...
Brady, what is your dream outcome here?
Yeah, I mean, in my mind, Illy, nothing really matters unless we decrease our dependence on China. If we're dependent on China for a whole bunch of stuff that they manufacture, then we're in a really bad place, especially, if God forbid we get into a conflict or anything. This is about increasing resilience. It's about being able to manufacture the stuff that we need. And also, I think one of the interesting points we've come back to again and again today is that manufacturing is also about innovation. It's, really like the ground floor for robotics innovation. There's so many really interesting ways that you can deploy AI that really drive and create value. We think that, by by focusing on manufacturing as a national priority and as a place to deploy these technologies, that we can increase America's leadership in AI and the other technologies that matter.
Right. You both came out of Washington to Washington with a purpose to serve. What drove you to do that? And as I've always asked my guests, people who are students, graduate students, thinking about moving to DC, what is something you guys would share with them?
Yeah, I think for me, I had a pretty strong academic interest in international relations, and I went back to graduate school at a time when international political order was changing more than it had since the end of the Cold War. And it turns out that technology is at the front and center of that momentous geopolitical shift. So I was extremely excited to come work at SCSP on technology policy issues, because those issues are driving academic discourse in the ivory tower. So it was kind of a way to really get hands-on. I'm relatively new to DC, but I've lived on the East Coast for a while. But I would just say, the density of young professionals in Washington is kind of unmatched. I think it's a really exciting place to be.
Thanks, Addis. Brady?
Yeah, I think it's a poorly kept secret that 20-somethings basically run most everything in DC. If you're a young person, you want to make a difference, and you want to think about the future of the U.S.-China relationship and the future of who makes the rules for the technologies that are shaping our world. I don't think there's a better place that you can be than to be in DC.
Thank you to both of you for co-authoring this memo. Thanks for tuning in. This was Memos to the President, focusing on advanced manufacturing.